Now, a completely different aspect of the war, this has been mainly the military and the government's buildup to it, is the CIA involvement. The CIA operates on a completely different paradigm. They have no rules. They can pretty much do as they please, as you've heard earlier this morning. And just to give you a few examples, most people probably don't remember Abu Ali al-Harith, who was the mastermind behind the bombing of the USS Cole. Well, the CIA got him, and the way they did it is they sent an unmanned Predator drone into Yemen, who was an ally of ours at the time, and just launched a missile at his car and blew him to smithereens, right on the highways of Yemen. Along with al-Harith, 6 others died, including an American citizen. So the CIA murdered an American citizen by firing a rocket at him from the air. So fact to remember, the CIA has killed U.S. citizens, murdered U.S. citizens. Fact to remember, the first American killed in the war in Afghanistan was a CIA agent. Most people probably don't remember the name Mike Spann, but he was a CIA agent. He was actually from Northern Virginia here, not far from here. And he was killed in a riot, a prison riot, right at the beginning of the war, where 214 out of 300 prisoners were killed. He was killed the day he arrived, and he had just started interrogating the detainees there when the riot broke out. And as an interesting aside, two of the people who survived, which there weren't that many, were John Walker Lind and Yasser Assam Hamdi. John Walker Lind, if you remember, was the American Taliban. He was an American citizen. He had converted to Islam at a very young age, had traveled to Pakistan to study Islam, and had ended up with the Taliban. Now, whether or not he did anything wrong by being with the Taliban or not is immaterial. What really counts is how he was treated by the CIA once he was captured. He was drugged. His clothes were cut off of his body. He was blindfolded. He was duct taped to a stretcher, and he was put inside a metal shipping container. And prior to his capture, he'd been injured in battle. He still had a bullet in his leg that they did not remove. And when the CIA finally interrogated him, he was still drugged, he was still naked, and they left the bullet in his leg. And he's now serving 20 years in a Supermax prison. He agreed to a plea deal, which Jim was referring to earlier, which prevents him from talking about his captivity and treatment, and to drop any claims that he has been tortured. The CIA has also kidnapped purported terrorists from countries all over the world. Extraordinary rendition. Dana Priest is the one who broke this story, who did the real legwork on this in a piece in the Washington Post, and this is from that piece. Members of the rendition group follow a simple but standard procedure. Dressed head to toe in black, including masks, they blindfold and cut the clothes off their new captives, then administer an enema and sleeping drugs. They outfit detainees in a diaper and a jumpsuit for what can be a day-long trip. Their destinations, either a detention facility operated by cooperative countries in the Middle East and Central Asia, including Afghanistan, or one of the CIA's own covert prisons, referred to in classified documents as black sites, which at various times have been operated in 8 countries, including several in Eastern Europe. So the CIA, a branch of our government, is yanking people off the streets in countries all over the world, blindfolding them, stuffing them into jets, and flying them off to get tortured and interrogated, disappearing them without a trace. Now, it's not known exactly how many people they've done this to, but it's thought to be at least 100 people. And at least 2 of them, one of which Jim was talking about, Khalid El-Masri and Maher Arar, seem to have been completely innocent. It was just a case of mistaken identity, but as Jim said, they were unlucky. And as one of the questioners just pointed out, The Guardian just had a piece last week that it is possible now that detainees are being kept on secret vessels, up to 17 U.S. naval vessels that are anchored on countries throughout the world. So, what's happened to these people? Well, what's happened to them is Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, and torture. So one of the most important facts to remember is that the U.S. government systematically tortured people. It's infuriating. According to a New York Times piece in January 2005, the tactics include urinating on detainees, jumping on one detainee's leg, which had already been wounded by gunfire, with such force that it could not thereafter heal, and continue by pounding on that detainee's leg with a collapsible metal baton, pouring phosphoric acid on detainees, sodomization of detainees with a baton, tying ropes to the detainees' legs or penises and dragging them across the floor. Our government. And of course, we've seen pictures of other tactics they use. You've seen the man up on a box hooded with electric wires attached to his body. You've seen the stack of naked bodies in front of American servicemen. Waterboarding, of course, which everybody has heard of. So, very important fact to remember, our government tortures people. Now, the Bush administration wants us to believe that this was just a bunch of bad apples, some sergeants and privates who got carried away. But important fact to remember, it's not just a bunch of bad apples. Sergeant Ivan Frederick, one of the soldiers who was posted to Abu Ghraib, stated in his video diary, "Military intelligence has been present and witnessed such activity. Military intelligence has encouraged and told us, great job, and that they were now getting positive results and information." And in a recent ABC News report, in dozens of top-secret talks and meetings in the White House, the most senior Bush administration officials discussed and approved specific details of how high-value al-Qaeda suspects would be interrogated by the CIA. Highly placed sources said a handful of top advisors signed off on how the CIA would interrogate top al-Qaeda suspects, whether they would be slapped, pushed, deprived of sleep, or subjected to simulated drowning called waterboarding. So, important fact, people knew about this. In addition to the torturing, people were also murdered at Abu Ghraib and other places. According to the Associated Press, at least 108 prisoners have died in U.S. custody in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, at least 26 of those detainees have been investigated as potential homicides, but there is no doubt that homicides occurred. The same Sergeant Frederick said of one prisoner, "They stressed him out so bad that the man passed away. The next day, the medics came in and put his body on a stretcher, placed a fake IV in his arm to suggest that he had died under medical care, and took him away." In another case, 56-year-old Iraqi Major General Hamad Muwash, he was asked to come in for questioning, which he did so voluntarily. And for his compliance, they stuffed him in a green sleeping bag, wrapped that sleeping bag in electrical cord, laid him on the floor, and beat him until he died. So, fact to remember, we have murdered people over there. So while all this was going on in the war on terrorism in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we were doing horrible things to detainees, Iraqis in Afghanistan, the Bush administration started doing horrible things to us and our civil liberties. Fact to remember, President Bush has signed over 750 executive signing statements. And again, I would refer you to Jim Bovard for great work on the signing statements. He's written some great pieces on it. But what a signing statement is a footnote. Everybody knows that the way a law is passed is that Congress passes a bill and the president signs it into law. Well, when Bush signs something into law, he takes what is an executive signing statement and says, well, I don't like this part, and this part doesn't pertain to me because I'm commander at war and I don't need to pay attention. Nothing but a clear power grab, and clearly violates the Constitution's requirement that he faithfully execute the law. So fact to remember, Bush has signed over 750 executive signing statements.